Um, I was laid off from a job. I was around 30 years old. I had a lot of time on my hands. I was given a book called The Game of Life and How to Play It by Shin, S-H-I-N-N, written in the early 1920s. And it said that you should live intuitively and that from there wonderful, abundant things would happen. So I took the book literally and said, today I'm going to do what the book says literally. And so I entered the moment of now, and I said, what do I feel like doing? And I said, I feel like leaving my apartment. And so for the remainder of the day, I turned right, I turned left, I got on a train, I got off the train, I ended up in Central Park, which is where I lived in New York. And I saw a man on a park bench, and he looked innocuous enough, so I sat next to him, and we started a conversation, had a lot in common, both working in technology and both interested in paranormal, psychic medium experiences. I went with him to his reader on another day, and his reader, with a very heavy Spanish accent, he was a Cuban ex-medical doctor, threw down a very overused deck of cards, tarot cards, threw them down and said, your guides are trying to come through. And I said, what does that mean? And he told me, all you have to do is ask for them. So I went home as fast as I could, locked the door to my minuscule New York apartment, and asked that my guides come through. And literally my head was thrown back, and this voice emanated from my throat, which scared the living daylights out of me. And, and even though I'd been around that, my mother had been, involved with the occult. I didn't know what this was because I never was at a level of detail. As a matter of fact, you know how children are; they tend to negate their parents in some way.
Sure.
So, right? So, anyway, I was still very curious, so I asked again, and I had nowhere to run. My apartment was about 2 feet by 2 feet, and there I sat, having a conversation with this voice coming through me, who said he was Michael, and he stayed with me for 2 weeks, and then I was prepared for another guide, who was my major guide, and off I went. And then I found a book by Ruth. No, what's her name? Jane, can't remember her last name. Seth Speaks. I don't know if you've heard of that book. It was in the 80s. I can't remember her last name. Famous author. In any event, she's had the same experience I had in opening up to her guide, Seth, where she was prepared for 2 weeks by an entity called Michael.
Oh, you mean Jane Roberts?
Jane Roberts, that's it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
She was prepared by an entity named Michael, and then Seth came through for her. So I was like, wow, that's cool. That happened to me, and it happened to her, and I didn't know about it, and blah, blah, blah. So that's my first experience.
So, here you were basically having a conversation with yourself because the voice was emanating from you.
Absolutely.
How long did the conversation last, and how were you prepared by this voice or by Michael for the next stage of your transfiguration?
Well, I don't really know how because I was immersed in it, but it felt like this. It felt as at first that I was just getting used to allowing something to flow through me that I did not feel in control of. And as I teach psychic development and also channeling and mediumship, that's one of the major things to get used to is being able to allow what seems to be, as far as our perception goes, information from a source we're not in control of to come through to our consciousness. So the preparation then was one of getting used to allowing something else, some other information, energy, perception to come into my consciousness.
How many people do you think actually receive these messages that they just fluff off to being their imaginations?
Probably most people. I think all of us are always getting messages all the time from, to be quite honest with you, Rob, we all have a metaphor of what we think it's like, but I don't think we really, on Earth, can really understand what it's like until we actually go to the spirit world. But I think we have guides, and they work with us, and people are always getting messages. It could come through as a gut feeling. It could come through as a dream. It could come through as a synchronicity, you know, like, for example, I'm thinking of taking up massage as a career, and then you see 3 commercials in a row, or you talk to a friend who's a masseuse and is doing very well with that. So most of us are always getting messages. We just don't pay attention, or we don't really know where they're coming from.
Does everyone have the ability to become a psychic or to become a trance channel?
Yes. I think it's a God-given right, just as we can speak or we can walk. But the thing is, it has to be developed. And also, I believe some people probably have more of a natural inclination, the way the brain is structured and or their life purpose. When I say inclination, I mean the talent as well as the interest. You know, not everybody can play basketball, but we can all try to shoot for a hoop. You know what I mean?
Before we were talking that we basically have planned our lives before we have come to this realm or this existence. And if that is true, why don't we bring some of the memories or some of the knowledge that we have already learned to make this lifetime easier?
Well, if you knew everything before you started, the game would be over. Part of the reason that we have sort of amnesia, I believe, is so that we can have that wonderful adventure of remembering and discovering. Because in the remembering and discovering of our true essence, and then finally the support and act on that essence, is the opportunity to make our self-knowledge and self-endorsement stronger. It's like going into a gym to lift weights. Through the resistance of lifting the weights, we build a stronger muscle. Through the resistance of not knowing who we are and then discovering that, we build a firmer conviction to our own beauty, our own essence, our own gifts. And I believe everybody's purpose is to remember who they are. And that's the thing that makes us more divine in the end.
Okay, but let's take this analogy. When I was a kid, I used to love putting model airplanes together, the plastic ones, or the plastic boat kits, the plastic airplane kits. And it came in a box that you had to assemble it. Now, without instructions, it would be very hard to put the model plane together, thus being life. However, when in that box comes the directions to assembling that model airplane and the experience of life, I will use as the glue that binds those plastic parts together. Now, there's 2 ways we could do that model airplane. The first way, without the instructions, which would make it very hard, and we would probably make a number of errors in the construction of that airplane, or by using the instructions, that would make that airplane the right way it should be. It would be a completed, finished product. Now, if we do come from another realm to this existence, why are we not given the instructions, not to make it easy, but to make it that much better?
Wow, what a loaded question. Not that it's really loaded, but there's so many ways to approach answering that. One thing is, who's to say there's one right way to put your life together or the airplane together? In your example, there is one way to put the model airplane together, but in the idea of spirit, there perhaps are many right ways to experience your life. So that's one thing.
Right.
The next thing that comes to mind is that there are instruction books, depending on, again, we are all so diverse that what makes sense to you will not make sense to me, and vice versa. So let's look at that instruction book. It can be written in many languages, Spanish and Chinese and whatever. I have a sister who's very Christian-oriented, and without that instruction book, she couldn't live her life. That makes sense to her. So we all have our own way of looking at things, and the instruction book, the generic instruction book then, would be your spiritual principles of how you are going to live your life, what your values are. Now, I believe that I've written an instruction book that I've used for my clients, but then again, I believe I'm attracting those people that would understand or need my instruction book, because I would not attract someone that has the beliefs of my sister, because it just, I wouldn't resonate for those kind of clients. So, so I think there are instruction books. I think they're different books for different people. And I also think that there's not one right way to be. Maybe having mistakes is also good. So, trying to answer the question as best I can.
All right. Well, let me ask you this. I think you've done an admirable job on answering that, and I thank you for it. Theology, as either a word of fact or a philosophy, does it hinder the spiritual being in each one of us? Does it go against the universal spiritual teachings?
Did you say theology, Theo?
Yes, theology.
Theology,
yes.
Okay. I believe that when somebody adopts a practice, a religious practice, and just follows the external rules, but forgets what the theme is behind the rules, that in effect could take them farther away from a true spiritual practice. So I don't think theology takes people away, but I do think outward, if that's all it is, just following rules, then it definitely loses or misses the point. I'm going to give you a kind of satirical example.
All right, why don't we hold on to the example until we come back from this commercial break, because we've got to take a break in about 50
absolutely.
seconds.
No problem.
Laura, thank you very much for joining us. It's great having you with us. Exo Nation, LauraMendelsohn.com is the website. And if you'd like to call Laura for a one-on-one consultation, area code 954-465-7338. My name is Rob McConnell. This is the X Zone. Don't forget, I will be the Master of Ceremonies at the Body, Soul, Spirit Expo in Toronto, February the 17, 18, and 19 at the International Centre, 6900 Airport Road in Mississauga. If you'd like to contact the good people at Body, Soul, Spirit Expo to see if there's any exhibitor booths left, their website, www.bodysoulspiritexpo.com. I'll be back after this break. Don't go away.
This empty street on the boulevard of broken dreams.
With each new extreme weather event or terrorist act, it becomes increasingly obvious that we live in uncertain and challenging times. We all buy car insurance. Why not collapse and catastrophe insurance? Matthew Stein, an MIT-trained engineer and green builder, has written 2 outstanding books to help people prepare, plan for, and deal with everything from minor situations lasting a few days to full-on collapse. Matt's first book, When Technology Fails, is a manual for self-reliance, sustainable living, and surviving the long emergency. This massive book covers the gamut from first aid and emergency preparedness to alternative healing, renewable energy, primitive living skills, and 18th century technologies that could be critical to your comfort and survival in a long-lasting crisis. Matt's second book, When Disaster Strikes, is a comprehensive emergency preparedness handbook and survival guide. When Disaster Strikes is an essential item for every family's go bag. Both books are available at all usual sources. There's a wealth of totally free information posted at whentechfails.com, and author-signed copies may be purchased at mattstein.com. That's www.whentechfails.com and www.mattstein.com.